Hey guys, welcome back to Telltale. I'm Emily,
I'm great.
and we are going to be going through our next one in Dangerous Visions.
Yes.
And this one's called The Malley System by author's name escapes me. Oh my gosh.
Miriam Allen
There it
DeFord.
is. There it is. I was almost named Miriam.
Okay.
I'm glad I wasn't.
She is an author who started publishing way back in the 1920s.
Dang.
So she had been, this is another one,
Another female author who's been around a long time.
but another one that, well, she was born in 1888,
Oh my goodness.
died in 1975. So this is
Shit.
1967.
That's
She
a
was pretty
long
damn
ass
old.
time.
Yes.
What a beautiful life. A
Yeah.
long life.
And came from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
This was her 61st work, according to my bibliography, published in Harlan Ellison's Dangerous Visions. So, Dangerous Visions was definitely not a book exclusive to just new authors doing new things. He invited people from all over the genre, as we've talked before, a lot of seasoned veterans that
Mm-hmm.
come from the golden age of science fiction submitted stories to Ellison for Dangerous Visions. Miriam Allen DeFord being one of them. And she's probably not so well known today, probably because she's been dead since 1975. Most of the great science fiction fantasy authors that have been gone that long,
Mm-hmm.
nobody remembers them.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems once you die, your bibliography gets removed from the publisher's list slowly, and then people go,
Kind of go into
Miriam,
obscurity. Yeah.
and people forget about them, even though they wrote some really great stuff.
Yeah.
Like Miriam Allen DeFord is an author that's worth looking up and worth looking into, not just the Malley system, but other things that she published.
Mhm.
Especially being, everybody's saying how women didn't get opportunities in science fiction back then. She started
Here
publishing in
she.
the 20s, guys,
Yeah.
and she didn't even have to change her name to John. She was Miriam, a very
Miriam.
definitely female name,
Good to see.
and she was getting published.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Let's start getting
anything
rid
can
of the
happen.
myths.
Yes.
Hmm.
Let's get it straight. There probably could have been more women publishing in the genre back
Hmm.
then, but they weren't non-existent. They were
Hmm.
there. They
There
were
was representation in
doing
the
some
genre.
good
Hmm.
things. Um,
And with impressive work.
mhm. And so now it's up to us to not forget about them.
Hmm. Yes, it's important to keep those memories alive.
So, and that's what Telltale Books is all about,
That's
is
what we're all
trying to
about.
keep alive dead literature.
Hmm. That's why we're here.
Moldy literature. We try to
We'll
chase that
dust it
mold
off
away.
and bring it back out for you to see. So.
So, speaking of which, I have a copy. This is just the book club edition, not
Hmm.
first edition, really,
Hmm.
but this is the original Dangerous
Dangerous
Visions.
visions. Ooh, cool illustration.
Hmm.
Very
Leo
cool.
and Diane Dillon,
Very,
one of
very
Ellison's
cool.
favorite illustrators,
I like the
illustration people.
combination of like medical illustration with this little creature
Hmm.
thing.
Well, it's a literal illustration of Dangerous Vision.
Hmm. You see the danger. It appears to be some kind of harpy,
Hmm.
and it will kill you.
Hmm.
Kill you dead.
But
Right?
it's still
And I love
pretty.
the typography. Oh, that's so
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
very 60s.
So cool. It's so cool.
Hmm.
I love that.
Hmm.
Oh, that must have been a pain in the ass to typeset.
It was. I'm sure it was drawn by hand.
It was yeah, it was probably
Maybe
illustrated.
by the Dylans, right,
Hmm.
as part of their illustration.
Maybe. I don't know.
So anyway, synopsis.
Synopsis. So this is actually a series of stories, in the way it's presented. It's POVs of several criminals. Kind of one after the other. A child molester, a rapist, a murderer, and there was one other one I thought. Maybe that's it. Maybe it was just the three or four.
Forgive.
Yeah, I forget. But it's a series of criminals. And it's going through the crime they committed from their point of view that got them caught and put in prison. And then the very last part of the story is one of the guards at the prison institution talking about the machine that was made by Malley that causes inmates to experience as part of their punishment the crime they committed that got them caught. Or the last crime that major crime they committed before incarceration. And
Hmm.
by so making them relive it, forces them to either be reformed or desensitized to the fact that they had done it and not want to do it again, kind of cause revulsion. It's kind of a similar concept to what they talked about in Clockwork Orange,
Yep.
where basically overexpose him to the stimuli and then a negative reaction that causes it to basically make them repulsed by what they've done.
Hmm.
Not that any of these people would ever actually get out, but this was basically like the first second round of implication or implementation
Hmm.
in the prison system to see if this would be successful.
Right.
Um so yeah, that's basically the story.
Hmm.
And then of course there's a little interesting tidbit at the end, but I won't spoil it for you. So it's that's basically the whole concept of this story is would it reform people? It poses the question, would it reform people to force them to continue to relive their crime?
Hmm. So what did you think?
I mean, it's not a concept that I'm unfamiliar with.
Hmm.
It's an idea that I've thought of before, having never read this before
Yeah.
or not read anything like it before. So I feel very proud of myself that in high school I had thought of an idea very similar to this. And then over time it morphed into something else entirely when I was writing my short stories. But the concept is interesting. I like the what if question it poses,
Hmm.
and I think I don't know, like I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting, but it's not the best thing I've ever read
Okay.
either.
Okay.
So I wasn't like remarkably impressed,
All right.
but I still thought it was a really well written story. It got the
Hmm.
points across, it asked the questions, it, posed the opportunity. So it exists, and I think it's interesting. I
Yeah.
think it's well worth reading
Oh
and
yeah.
well worth pondering.
Hmm.
But the story itself, I didn't feel like gave me enough.
Okay. So was it dangerous?
I mean, yeah, I think any unpredictable what if scenario makes can be potentially dangerous. Literally in the story, it ends up being dangerous to certain individuals. Because of course I guess I have to spoil the thing I wasn't gonna spoil, but Malley himself, who developed this particular form of rehabilitation, actually ended up getting overpowered, as well as the guards, overpowered and murdered by inmates who were part of the first round of this trial.
Hmm.
Um, so it was definitely dangerous to him, because it was too effective in that everybody hated having to live through it, so they went and killed the guy who developed it.
Hmm.
Um, but it still poses the question of, is it possible to actually reform a person, or does it beget more violence?
Yeah.
So,
Well, from a editor publisher standpoint, it's very dangerous because even for today, the story starts with one of the criminals reliving a crime,
mm-hmm.
which is the rape and murder of a little girl.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
child
that right
molester.
there,
Yeah.
just whoa.
Yeah, that was quite a starter.
Hmm.
And then
And it's pretty graphic.
the other one was a murder. And it was kind of a crime of passion because she was being harmed by an abusive lover.
Hmm.
So you kind of feel like, oh, but that was kind of justified. That was self-defense. Yeah, she killed him, but
Hmm.
like I wouldn't necessarily have put her away for that
Yeah.
kind of situation. Like that could have been justice unfairly dealt
Hmm.
to a degree. And of course, we don't know the trials and all the evidence put against them. We're just experiencing their point of view of what had happened to him that day that the crime was committed.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, there's kind of like that question of, oh, was justice really served there? Like, did she
Hmm.
really plan it? Was she worth putting away for murder?
Hmm.
If it was really just crime of passion manslaughter kind of situation, and she was just trying to defend herself against this abuser kind of thing. So I
Hmm.
mean, it does pose those questions too.
Yeah. And there's a further interesting fact about a story like this. Not that nobody had ever covered any kind of prisons before. They had in science fiction. There
Mhm.
were prison planets and stuff like that.
Prisons.
But traditional golden age science fiction dealt with sciences like physics and chemistry
Mm-hmm.
and biology. Here you have somebody dealing with the science of psychology and
Social science.
prisoner reform.
Yeah, and social
You know,
sciences.
definitely not your traditional
No,
science fiction kind of science,
no. A
but
lot more factors.
it's science still, even though it's not a science that's an exact science.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like physics where you can write an equation that will describe it
Yeah.
perfectly. It's a much more inexact kind of science,
Mm-hmm.
and so harder to really write about
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot more questions. There
Yeah.
is a
A
lot
lot more
more
abstract.
that we don't know, and a lot of questions about whether or not the solution is workable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it actually, would it actually be effective?
Hmm.
And it also brings up the question of using humans for scientific study.
Hmm. That's a
Prisoners especially?
yeah, but how are you gonna with things like medical and
Mhm.
psychological science? How are you gonna know if something's going to work if you can't try it on a person?
Yeah, that's fair. And they've done a lot of prison and experiments and social
Mhm.
studies on those kinds of things too.
We can't really move those
Hmm.
sciences forward at all unless we do some experimentation on human beings.
Yeah,
Um, but
it just is
I
kind of
don't think anybody would say that that's a nice thing.
no. And you wonder if it was voluntary or involuntary.
Yeah.
Especially in a prison situation where basically, I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric even right now that prisons are just modern day slavery. So there, it does kind of pose that question too of using prisoners as guinea pigs. If it had
Hmm.
been a more voluntary situation,
Hmm.
but we don't know that. The story doesn't specify if that was
Right.
ever a voluntary thing where they could get a reduced sentence if they went through this program or not or what.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of unknowns that beg to pose more questions about humans dealing with those who
Hmm.
are incarcerated.
Yeah.
So,
So it definitely is a dangerous vision. This is
mhm.
something that would never have gotten published in analog in 1967, and
Absolutely not. I'm gonna need another
it
drink.
does deal with an area of a new area of science fiction at that time, at digging into these more social
Yeah.
questions that um, makes us definitely part of the new wave
Hmm.
that was happening at that in
Yeah.
1967.
Starting to talk more about social justice and that kind of
Hmm.
thing.
And it's
Is
just interesting that somebody that had been publishing since the 1920s
hmm
is writing stuff that was totally contemporary in 1967.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting too. And I think it's appropriate that something like this is written by a female as well, I
Hmm.
think, because it does speak specifically to that civil rights question of what if slavery is gone and we're reducing segregation, how are we not also recognizing that we really didn't get rid of slavery? We just reformed it into prison systems and posing that question of how do we make this more ethical? Can it be made more ethical? What are the ethics? I think it does a lot of that. And
Hmm.
especially during this age when civil rights was a big thing for women, to have a woman posing this question of, like, all right, now I've fought for my rights, things are moving in a good direction, let's talk about the next thing. So I think it's very appropriate
Yeah.
for this to have been written by a woman,
Yeah.
especially during the age it was written.
Hmm.
And someone who's seen it all by that point, too.
Yeah.
Everything,
She
the
was
whole spectrum.
79-year-old woman
Mm-hmm.
wrote this story.
Yes.
And it was completely contemporary with all the young stuff that was being published at the time.
Yes. And even now, it feels like this could have been
Yeah.
written
Yeah.
yesterday and
This
posted online, and it's fantastic.
it's not dated at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, really an excellent story. I wouldn't give it top tail.
No, I wouldn't either.
Right there.
Yeah. I would have liked more.
Just under, yeah.
More information, I think, would have made it a top tail, but I
Mm-hmm.
felt like the point and questions were posed with what little we got.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very concise.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, it was just concise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is definitely a recommended story. You
Absolutely.
should read this one.
Really interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's all I gotta say.
That's all I got. So, what do you have? What have you read the Malley system in Dangerous Visions? Leave your comments in the video about the Malley system or Miriam Allen DeFord or Dangerous Visions in general.
Yeah, read along with us too. We'd love to know
Yeah.
if you're actually reading along with us. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And
It's easy to access this book.
if you want to read along with Dangerous Visions, get your copy.
Mm-hmm.
And our next story in Dangerous Visions is by Robert Bloch.
Oh.
A Toy for Juliet.
Ooh. What kind of toy? I have questions.
Oh, don't go there.
It's Dangerous Visions. It could be anything.
Yeah.
I read Naked Lunch. I know what could happen.
Okay.
Anyway. But yeah, join us in reading Dangerous Visions. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.